So here is a complete setup for M-PESA implementation in Flutter. It's a bit sketchy, but let's do this and see how it's going to roll. So we'll start with top up. I'll press top up button. We do expect maybe to have some information on loading and such stuff, but anyway. So here we have, I'll have my PIN, and then I'll bring back my screen, and then we can send the response. So here we have feedback on a message, and then we also have account balance being top up. So you notice that it was a 0 with an exclamation mark. The exclamation mark was to be shown when there's no information pertaining the balance. So I'm going to do it again so that we can see the balance. So I'm going to do for the second time. So here we go. So I'll send. So we'll wait to see if it says a similar transaction is already in progress. So we'll do that in a moment. Oh yeah, so I think it's ready. So let's try that. And alright, we have the first message, and then let's see if the balance will be top up, and yeah, we have our balance. So let's see how all this stuff flows in a moment. So here is the app, the client app that is. We have the initialization here of the keys. Here we have some variables. You'll notice the user mail. In your scenario, maybe you have someone logged in, so you may use something else for the account. This one is static. Current account balance is not really useful at the moment. You'll check with the code. There's some other issues here. So the first function is update account. So when you initialize a transaction, we first create an entry so that when the feedback comes from the callback, we do have somewhere to persist the information. So we do initialize an empty account for receiving the receipts. So you create under deposits, and then the checkout request ID, and then you will receive some feedback. If it's okay, I print out transaction initialized, or if it's not okay, I print out failed. We have get account balance, which returns a stream of document snapshot. So if the Firebase is initialized, it tries to get the data. But if it's not, it returns a null until everything else is ready. So when can we consider it ready? We have initialize Flutter Fire. I just copied this one from the documentation. So when your app starts, you need to initialize your Firebase. So if it's initialized, we update as initialized to be true. But if not, it will remain as false. If there's also an error, we do flag error to be true. And then we also have one, hopefully this is a final function. We have start transaction, where you pass in your amount, then you pass in your phone, where it's going to be charged. And then of course you do process the transaction here. So most of these are defaults actually. You can see the account reference, transaction description, passkey, all these are provided in the documentation. I'm trying to process the response here. I'm first casting it as a map, and then you want to check if it has a response code, and then you also want to check if the response code is 0, meaning there's no error. And then of course you can update the account with the result, the initial function that we checked. And yeah, so if there's an error, you can print it out. You may wish to implement your own error handling, or you can also give the user some feedback whether the transaction is going to be processed, or maybe there was an error while initializing or something of that sort. So all that you can handle here. So let me close down this function, then we'll proceed. Yeah, so we're good. So in it, this is where I initialize Firebase. I call in this function so that it can be initialized. And then of course under build, So this is basically the layouts and everything else, the account balance that you saw. I'm using a stream builder to get account balance and then print them. I'm doing some checks here to avoid the errors. If the connection state is waiting or if it's null, I'll just give out a progress bar indicator or a circular progress bar. So if it's active, you have to realize that with the stream builder, the connection has to be kept alive. You also need to do some checks here and there. So we'll see on the server side what is happening with all these documents, the fields and everything else. That is, I'm returning a 0 if there are no balance. And then, of course, case this one was it's not null, so case it's null, I do a 0 and an exclamation mark. Case there was an error, or maybe there's something else that we cannot handle, or we are not interested really, we just leave an exclamation mark on the account balance. Yeah, so, and then of course I do check when you press the top up button, you do check if there's an error, you return, that is end that function. If it's not initialized, you also return to end this execution. But if it passes here, then you can start transaction where you pass the amount and the phone to be charged. And yeah, so that is it on the client side. Let's go very quickly to the server side, hopefully. Yeah. So here we have the cloud functions. It's a basic implementation of the cloud functions. This is where you receive the feedback from M-PESA processor. You had seen where we had placed the callback URL. So the callback URL, when it's hit via post, this is where you receive it. So you extract the body. Then you may wish to log what you received. And then here I do process. First, I'm interested with the result code. And then of course there's a checkout request ID. So these ones are constant, whether it's a failed transaction or it's a successful one. Those ones you will receive. And then you also want to check if it was successful, so that you can start processing. This is not a well-refined kind of a function, but it has works. So we're going to run with that one for now. But if you feel like you can do something better, you can do some cleanup and then suggest the changes via pull request or something. That would be interesting, really. So I do switch around. I would have used list access because it's a list, but I'm not really into that being static, so I decided to do switch. So I do grab the receipt, I do grab the phone number or whoever paid, I do grab the amount that was paid. The rest of the data, maybe I'm not interested. And then you create entry details here, much like a map or a JSON. And then, so this one here is a search function in a Cloud Firebase, where you want to search the Firestore to see if you can find a matching document where the checkout request ID that we did persisted really exists. So that we can have a picture of what we are talking about, let's just move fast to this other side. So this is how it looks like. So on the payments, if you had noticed the email that I had used, static one was Alice, and then of course we have the deposit data. So this is like a collection document, and then maybe I'm not sure if it was this one that we had just recharged. Yes, it was this one. So when you initialize on your phone, this document is created, an empty one. So you can see this one is the one that failed the transaction. It said there was one that was similar that was already running. So it did initialize with the checkout request ID. So when we come back with the payload from M-PESA processor, we do try to search the documents that are in deposit to find if there's one with a field that matches this key that we have received from the payload. Because this key, you have to realize that it's common. You're being sent from the client app when you initialize the transaction, and then you are also being sent from the server side via the payload data. So that is what will really identify your transaction to be particular and to be precise. Which transaction are you handling? So you try to search. If you find this one, then you update. So for this one, it found to be this one, so it updated the rest of the information from the final result. And then of course, if you go back a little bit, we have the balances for this particular user. Account, as you can remember on our phone, we had our account balance, so we are reading from here. So that's the structure basically. So let's proceed with this one very fast. So we do a search of this collection group deposit where we can find a document. So if you can hover around, you will see some documentation that it's saying it creates and returns a query with additional filter that documents must contain the specified field. So the field we are talking about is a checkout request ID. It must contain the value that we've received from the payload here. So if it's successful that we find a match, we do update the balances. Of course, you want to update that reference with the rest of the details, that is including the amount, the fund paid from, and the receipt. And then also you proceed to extract, because as you saw, it was a path that contained the user email at some point. So here I'm trying to grab that document, and then I'm saying give me the path, and then split that path into a list of items. And then I want to grab the second one using the index 0 and then 1. I want to grab the second one. So quickly let's check. So this will be 0, this will be 1, this will be 2, and then the next will be 3. Yes. So we're interested in the user email, so I would say grab the second parameter, will return the email. So with this email, I can proceed now and then say payments / email / balance / account, and then I get that document. So if the document exists, so if it's not equal to undefined, it means that the user already has some balance and the account exists. So you want to get the wallet balance, and then you want to add what has been topped up now to the balance, and then you want to update the current balance. That's why you saw the balance reflecting immediately. But case the document was not found, meaning the user is topping up for the first time, then I've logged also that there's no user found, so creating a new user with balance. So you want to try, and then grab the payments / mail / balance, and then document account and set the wallet balance. So this is a new wallet balance. So in case there's an error, you may also log out the error. And then yeah, this is the overall exception while handling these ones. And yeah, so this one here, if case there was no document found matching the request ID, that is for some reason you initialize the transaction, but it was not persisted to the server side. That is, the phone did not manage to send the checkout. So for me, I'd normally try to keep the records. That is why I do save them in lost and found / deposit info / somewhere. I try to keep maybe the payment was successful, and for some reason you never did anything here because you did not found a matching document. So you can see from here. Yes, so if the document did not match the checkout request ID, you really do not have to throw away the information because that was a successful payment. So you need to persist them somewhere for claims on a real business environment. You really need to keep your records well. So case it was not equals to 0 because 0 means successful in M-PESA feedback. So you have a failed transaction. You may as well wish to persist the information. And then remember to end the function, because if you do not give some feedback, then the function will run into a timeout because it will not have a place that is to terminate the function execution. So you may need to do something at the end. That is, you do the response. So this response here is at the top here. Yes, we have the request and then we have the response. So we want to stick to that. So basically, we are not going to dive into how this stuff works. You can check in the documentation. I'll just show you in a moment. So you may the logs I was talking about, logging and everything else. You can get the log here. Then so this is where you find your function, and then you may wish to check on the logs. So you can see on our last transactions we have a bunch of logs. These ones are the ones that we did log on our own. So a failed transaction, you can remember the one that returned that there was a concurrent one already. Then received payload, you saw that we logged something of the sort. So this is the kind of the response. You can check with the documentation, you will find how the response looked like when it's successful and when it's failed. You can also check this one, account found updating with balance 20 from 10. So all these ones are logs. Let me just shift very fast here. So all that information is what it's here, log. This one. You can also log account not found, creating a new balance. For the one that you saw failed transaction, it's here. So you're not going to go into your browser log, it's Firebase log, really. You may have some warnings here like billing account not configured and such stuff, but for testing purposes, I think it would run smoothly. So you may also be asking where are we going to find these ones. You can head over to my GitHub under mobile demos. All those ones we have server functions, and then we have the client app. So all these ones are available. You can go check, be sure you can test them, you can get some hands-on on them, see how it's going to help you. So you may also wish to do some further modifications on what exists here. So we can as well switch the user account here to see how the new balance would look like. Maybe you can say Bob. I don't know if it's still connected. We lost connection to the device. So let me just bring it up straight away. And then, yeah. So let me run quickly and then with the new user, that is Bob at email provider. So you'll see that the new balance will be updated to something else, because in this scenario it's a new user who doesn't have an account. So we are referring to a new user in this case who does not have an account on our Firestore. So you want to check on payments. So we only have Alice. So we're going to do with Bob and see how it's going to go about. So it's building. This should take roughly 40 seconds and then it's done. So I'll change the amount here. You may wish to have amount differently. I'll change the amount to 1 Bob so that we can be sure that what we are doing here is what we do expect to see. Maybe 2 Bob, 1 Bob, yeah. So as it's going to run, if you need the details on accessing the M-PESA, you will need to create an app on Sandbox, and everything else you will find on the previous demo on how you can get all these keys. Whooping 99 seconds. That was a whole time. So we can wait on this other side. And yeah, so it's fetching the account balance, and then so remember the user does not have an account at the moment, so we'll try and top up for this new user. Remember, we want to watch if there'll be a new user here with some balance or maybe some deposit. So let's be on our phone. So also remember that we had done some logging. So this is what I was talking about, the checkout request ID. So this one is common. You are being left with this information here, and then from the payload you will receive from M-PESA, it will also have the same checkout request ID. So this is what we are using as a primary key, if you may wish to call it, where we can identify this transaction was initialized from this user, and then we have received the feedback on the other end. So I'll proceed with my PIN. So it's sent, we're waiting for the reply, and it's successful. And of course, we have the account balance updated. So let's head over to this place, and yes, we have Bob has the deposit information here. So we have the checkout request ID. So if you want to confirm that this ends, it starts with 30 and ends with 600, you can head over to the app, and you can notice that it's actually the same checkout request ID. Later you will realize how useful that is in tracking your transactions. And then we can also check the account balance. We have the account, and the wallet is 10. So you may be asking, now we have the figures and everything else, and where is the money? The money will be deposited into your paybill account, that is, while you're configuring all this stuff here. So I think that is it from this end. Thanks so much for passing by, and see you some other time.